we've got a ton to go over today, and we are going to be really talking about expense management for accountants. So as you guys know, expense management's a really big deal and can be one of those things that is a big process change for a lot of accounting departments, but can also be an extraordinary quality of life for people, especially those who are in traveling positions. I mean, this can be a really big deal for people who have to submit a lot of expense reports. So, so we're going to kind of jump in. Okay, so let's talk about the end-to-end expense workflow. So this is like the whole process, beginning to end. So evidence, submission, verification, approval, reimbursement, audit, and then reporting. So let's just kind of talk through kind of each one of these sections to begin with. So evidence, you got to get the underlying source documents in some sort of form or fashion. What does that look like? Is it receipts? Is it invoices? Other documents? What proves this expenditure? And once you have that evidence, then we submit it. What does that submission look like? Is it digital? Is it paper? Let's hope it's digital. If it's not, it's good that you are here. Then how do we verify it? How do managers, or how does the system help us to match what's happening in the underlying source document to what has been entered into the submission process? How does that get approved? Who's approving it? Who is, and what's the litmus test for approval versus rejection? And what are the criteria by which you are now sending something back for additional information? And then, of course, the reimbursement process. Then what are we doing to look to make sure that we're actually following the policy? And then how do we use the information gained in the process to get better, right? That's the huge component of this. So that's the whole process from beginning to end. All right, okay. Before we get into the workflow, however, one thing you probably noticed is that really it's, where's the policy? That's the kind of the starting point. So let's call this stage like 0.1. It's safe to assume that most of you probably have a policy already in place, but does it do everything that you need it to do, right? So does it define what eligible and non-reimbursable expenses are? Does it make sure that employees know what they can, what they can't claim, what the restrictions are? Are they set out in advance so that no one can plead like, well, I didn't know. So that's kind of that would be a bad place for those people to be. Spending limits. Business lunch is great, but are there excessive spending habits that might be in place? So, are people ordering a filet mignon for lunch? Do we have reasonable limits in place? Is everyone being a good steward of the company's money so it doesn't feel like they're taking advantage of getting reimbursed? Are we asking for the evidence? Are we making it clear what evidence should be submitted in order to gain the reimbursement? Is it, if it's a piece of furniture, does it have to be an invoice? Is a credit card receipt sufficient, depending on the dollar amount, depending on what's purchased? I mean, what does that look like? Additionally, do we have a clear approval process? Who's going to approve expenses? Is it a layer of people? Is it a manager or the manager of a manager? Is it someone in accounting or finance? What does that really look like? And does that change based on dollar amount or the type of purchase, whether it's inventory or G&A? That could be a big deal. And are we communicating process? So I can't tell you how many times we've written policies, but we've never given them to people. How many times have you guys written standard operating procedures? And great that you write them, but if you don't communicate them out, you can't enforce it. And especially no one knows what to do. So no one's following it. So we've got to make sure that those guidelines are effectively communicated. And then, we have to make sure that we are confirming compliance. If people know that someone's watching them, they're more likely to adhere to the policy. So this kind of comes back to that. Are we auditing? Are we reporting? Are we going back and asking questions? Often not the favorite thing for us to do, and sometimes we don't even have time to do it, but it is one of the priorities we have to have in place. Otherwise, we have a policy that's not being effective. Integrating this with your ERP system. I don't know about you guys, but if we were trying to minimize data entry at every possible step of the way here. So if we can get data into in a standardized format, into in an integration where two systems really are talking to each other, and there is a transference of data from one to the other, and we know that that data is coming into the right places in our ERP system, it is eliminating so much hassle for us on the back end. So that integration is 100% absolutely the key. And then once we get it integrated, it's then how are we automating that? So once something moves from, and I've seen this in softwares where, you know, once something is an expense comes in and it's essentially approved, that means it's then going to get synced into essentially AP in the ERP system. And then once it gets reimbursed, then the reimbursement comes and relieves accounts payable. And 100% of that is automated. So that piece becomes a relief off of the accounting and finance team of something to have to look at it at month end. They're not really subject to that same level of requirement of spending time on something, you know, accruals for, did we capture all the expense reimbursement reports? Where are they all? Are they all in there? Yeah, they're all in there because it's happening automatically and no one has to really think about it. That's a huge time saver. And as we all know, there is this push, you know, this outlook that why are we doing a month-end close, right? Shouldn't we have almost like a daily close if our technology is good enough? Why are we waiting till the end of the month to look at certain things? We should be examining this stuff every single day. And that seems a little extreme sometimes, but honestly, if the technology is configured in the right way, that's what we can get to. It's just, it minimizes that whole month-end process. Biggest tips here, digital, automation, prioritizing these, you know, real-time processes, streamlining reimbursement, embrace the audit process. So I think the takeaway for you guys really sounds like if we could create something that's mobile friendly, that allows for digital receipt management and time examination, automate those verifications, be massive for you. So how do you apply your learning today? You know, take a look at your process, go back and examine it, and maybe do some trial. I'm a real big fan of let's try it. If it doesn't work, we can always change it back, right? So it gets people kind of off the train of like, well, it's really scary to change. Well, we can always return to the way we're doing it before if it doesn't work. But then examine like the progress you do make. If you do make changes and you take baby steps, what works? How do we make it better? How do we keep building upon that change and that culture of change to keep things moving from an automation and technological advancement? And then keep going back and, you know, looking and get feedback from people, you know, educate, come to continuing education programs just like this and just learn about best practices. And also get familiar with these programs. Like take a tour, learn, see what's out there, you know, take the time to expand your knowledge and mind and see if there is a software that best suits your particular business and processes.